Have you ever stopped to think about the buildings you use every day? Your home, your office, that coffee shop you love. They're all shaped by this invisible blueprint, a secret set of rules that make sure they're safe, that they're efficient, and that they work for everyone. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the code that literally builds our world.
But before we dive in, let's just imagine for a second. What if there were no rules at all? What if you could just build whatever you wanted, however you wanted? It might sound like total creative freedom, right? But the reality would be a whole different story.
And yeah, the difference is pretty stark. Without rules, you're looking at potential chaos. You'd have dangerous structures, huge fire risks, and just a massive waste of energy. Not to mention, buildings could easily be designed in ways that just shut people out. But with rules, you get the total opposite. You get a framework for safety, you get clear standards for efficiency, and you get a real commitment to making buildings that work for every single person.
So, what is this framework then? I mean, it's not just a bunch of good ideas somebody wrote down. It's a legal requirement. Here in the UK, it's all laid out in what are known as the building regulations. Let's get into what that actually means for you and me.
Okay, so here's the official bit. The building regulations are the high-level standards for how we design and build things. They set out the big principles. Buildings have to be safe, they have to be healthy, and they have to perform well. But to actually make that happen on a building site, those big ideas are broken down into a series of super detailed guides called approved documents. The best way to think about it is like a giant rule book with different chapters or parts for every little thing. So you've got Part B, which is all about fire safety. You've got Part L, which tackles how we conserve energy, and Part M, which makes sure everyone has access. You name it, there's a chapter for pretty much every aspect of how a building works.
Let's start with the absolute #1 job of these rules: safety. And we're not just talking about stopping a building from falling down. We're talking about protecting us from all those hidden dangers, like fire or poisonous fumes.
So if you were to flick through the fire safety document, you'd see codes like this all over the place. R, E, I-30. It looks pretty cryptic, doesn't it? Almost like a password. What on earth could this bit of technical jargon have to do with keeping you safe in a fire?
Turns out, everything. R stands for the wall's resistance to collapse. E is for its integrity, its ability to stop flames from getting through. And I is for insulation, how well it stops heat from getting through. And the 30? Well, that means it can do all three of those things for at least 30 minutes. So that wall isn't just a wall, it's a 30-minute shield, a carefully designed fire barrier that gives you precious time to get out safely.
And this focus on safety goes for the things we put inside our buildings too. Take document J. It covers things like boilers and log burners, and it all boils down to 3 key things: making sure there's enough air for the fuel to burn cleanly, making sure there's a safe flue for the fumes to get out, and just in case, making sure there's a carbon monoxide alarm. It's a simple, life-saving system.
But these rules aren't just stuck in the present, dealing with immediate dangers. They're also looking ahead, to the future. The regulations are always evolving, always being updated to help us tackle modern challenges, especially things like energy use and climate change.
A really important idea you'll find in document L is something called the U value. The easiest way to think of it is like a golf score for your walls or your windows. The lower the number, the better. A high U value means heat is just pouring out, wasting energy and money. So the regulations now demand really low U values. That means better insulation, which means warmer buildings and, you guessed it, lower energy bills.
But here's an interesting twist. Being so good at trapping heat has actually created a new problem: overheating in the summer. And that's where a newer rulebook, document O, comes into play. It recognizes that in certain parts of the country, a south-facing room with huge windows can basically turn into an oven. As you can see from this table, the rules now actually limit how big your windows can be to stop our super-insulated homes from getting dangerously hot. So, beyond keeping us safe and making our homes sustainable, the regulations have another massive core principle baked right in: inclusivity. Because let's be honest, a building isn't really working if it can't be used by everybody.
And this isn't just a vague hope. It is spelled out crystal clear. Just take a look at this table from document M. It shows you the exact number of wheelchair spaces that a public auditorium has to have, and it's all based on its size. So if you've got a small venue with up to 60 seats, you need at least 1 space. For a big 500-seater, you need 5. It's a precise, non-negotiable rule to make sure our public spaces are genuinely open to the public.
Now, this all makes perfect sense for shiny new buildings, right? But what happens when you try to apply these very modern rules to our beautiful historic architecture? Can you really just slap 21st century standards onto a building from the 19th century?
While the short answer is no, not always. And the good news is, the rules are smart enough to know that. They're flexible. As this guidance from historic England points out, it's all about finding a balance between improving performance and preserving the building's character. You can't just rip out original sash windows and stick in plastic ones if it would completely ruin the look of a listed building. It takes real care and expert judgment.
So when you pull it all together, you can see that this invisible blueprint isn't some old, dusty document that never changes. It's a living, breathing system. It's constantly being reviewed, it's being challenged, and it's being updated to meet the needs of today and tomorrow.
And you don't just have to take my word for it. You can see that evolution happening right here. This timeline just shows some of the planned updates for the very documents we've been talking about rolling out over the next few years. The rulebook is always being rewritten, always adapting to new science, better technology, and what we as a society decide is important.
Which really leaves us with one final big question. The regulations we have now are a direct response to the challenges we've faced in the past and the ones we face today. But as our world keeps changing, our climate, our technology, our way of life, what new things are we going to demand from our buildings? What will the next chapter of that invisible rulebook need to say?